Hi, let's continue with Piaget's stages of cognitive development. So, once a child has mastered object permanence, the child will move on to the second stage in Piaget's theory of cognitive development. And this is the preoperational stage, right? Preoperational stage from around 2 years to around 7 years. But once again, those are estimates, not set in stone, right? The years on this stuff. And of course, that's occurring earlier than we thought, than Piaget thought, right? As they make the point in the book again about continuity as opposed to stages. So be sure you read the chapter that discusses that a little bit more. So the child, realizes objects continue to exist, even out of sight. And so at that age, of course, the child will keep looking for that remote control after you hide it because they know it still exists. That don't work anymore. But anyway. And there's some other things, however, that, the child is still not a master at. Now, because the child uses language much more sophisticatedly, if that's a word. But, and they can start to think a little bit more logically. Not completely logically, of course, not yet. Right? But there are other things that characterize the preoperational child, right? The child in the preoperational stage here. So, basically, there are three things that characterize the preoperational child, classically according to Piaget. First, they lack conservation, right? They lack conservation. That's one of them. Egocentrism is another, right? They tend to engage in egocentrism or egocentric thinking. They only see things from their point of view, right? It's hard for them to see things from someone else's point of view. And then finally, I think I forgot to put this on the PowerPoint slides, but animism, or they engage in animistic thought. And that is attributing intention to inanimate objects, right? Like the inanimate objects meant to do that. So, a child asks, why is this guy angry? Right? That'd be an example of animistic thought, right? They're attributing intention to the sky, which is no. And they might attribute intention to, stuffed animals or a pretend friend, right? All of that stuff is normal and, tends to happen here in the preoperational stage. So that's some of the characteristics of the preoperational child. Now, that animistic thought, I guess more appropriately, the egocentric thought, right, relates to what the chapter calls children in the preoperational stage trying to develop, or in the process of developing, a theory of mind, right? And a theory of mind is just the ability, well, I guess they kind of decide it as the ability to read mental states of others, but it's the ability to realize others view things differently from you, right? Now, some might argue there are adults that still do that, but anyway, won't go there. Anyway, but they say, and they talk about this in the book, there's a PowerPoint slide on it, that really, children are developing this theory of mind. We have research that they're developing this theory of mind earlier than Piaget thought they were capable of. Once again, Piaget thought the stage goes to around 7 years. But they mention research in the book, right, that finds that children as young as 3.5 to 4.5 can start to understand that other people will hold a false belief, is kind of the way they say it. And they use, I mentioned a study, right, in the book that does this, where basically you have, children come into a room and they see a Band-Aid box, right, and of course they expect to find Band-Aids in it, but Band-Aids are not in it. Their crowns are in this Band-Aid box, right? This Band-Aid tin. And so, that's a surprise, and they, all that sort of stuff. But then they ask the children, what will another child think is in this Band-Aid box? Now, the child knows the box has crowns in it, crayons to draw with, not crowns on their head, but anyway. So the child knows that there's crowns in that. So egocentric thinking, they should predict another child will expect to find crowns in there. That would be an example of egocentric thinking. But the child realizes, and the child says, at least some of them, that other children will think they're Band-Aids in that box. So that's the beginning of an understanding that others have different beliefs from them, right? And that's happening at 3.5 to 4.5 years of age, much sooner than the 7 years that Piaget thought. So there's evidence once again that stuff is happening earlier on than Piaget thought. At least more modern research finds that. And they have a liquid test of conservation, a slide of that right here in the PowerPoint slides, where you have the two glasses exactly the same size with the same amount of color liquid in them. Ask the kid, which one has more, or do both glasses have the same amount? Right there. The kid says they have the same amount of liquid. The kid just said they have the same amount of liquid right in front of the kid. You pick up one of those glasses of colored liquid, you pour it into a taller, thinner glass. So the liquid's higher now than the other glass. You ask them, which one has more liquid in it? And the kid, all of a sudden, the kid says the taller glass has more liquid in it. Just a second ago, the kid said they have the same amount. Right in front of him, he poured that total amount from one of those into a different shaped glass, and now the kid says that one has more liquid. It's a lack of conservation, right? They don't understand that even though you change the shape, there's still the same amount there, right? And they got other tests of conservation. You can put a 2 rows of quarters in front of the kid and ask the kid how many quarters are there. Does one row have more quarters than the other? Are they the same? Kid says they're the same. Then all you have to do is increase the spacing between the quarters in one of those rows. Just increase the spacing between the quarters of one of those rows so it looks it's longer, and the kid will say that one has more quarters in it. Right? What? So they can think better, but obviously they're still making mistakes. But they're still thinking a lot. And so that's kind of a little bit anyway on the pre-operational child, and I'll stop this video there.